it seems that training LLMs efficiently is a big focus for XAI. What's the first of all, what's the limit of what's possible in terms of efficiency? There's this terminology of useful productivity per watt. Like, what have you learned from pushing the limits of that?
Well, I think it's helpful. The tools of physics are very powerful and can be applied, I think, to almost any arena in life. Mm-hmm. It's really just critical thinking. For something important, you need to reason from first principles and think about things in the limit, one direction or the other. So, in the limit, even at the Kardashev scale, meaning even if you harness the entire power of the sun, you will still care about useful compute per watt. So that's where I think probably where things are headed from the standpoint of AI is that we have a silicon shortage now that will transition to a voltage transformer shortage in about a year. Mm-hmm. Ironically, transformers for transformers. You need transformers to run transformers.
Somebody has a sense of humor in this thing.
I think, yes.
Oh, man.
Fate loves irony. Ironic humor. And an ironically funny outcome seems to be often what fate wants.
Humor is all you need. I think spice is all you need, somebody posted.
Yeah. But yeah, so we have a silicon shortage today. A voltage step-down transformer shortage probably in about a year, and then just electricity shortages in general in about 2 years. I gave a speech for the sort of world gathering of utility companies, electricity companies. Mm-hmm. And I said, look, you really need to prepare for a tripling of electricity demand. Because all transport is going to go electric with the ironic exception of rockets. And heating will also go electric. So energy usage right now is roughly 1/3, in very rough terms, 1/3 electricity, 1/3 transport, 1/3 heating. And so in order for everything to go sustainable, to go electric, you need to triple electricity output. So I encourage the utilities to build more power plants and also to probably have, well, not probably, they should definitely buy more batteries, because the grid currently is sized for real-time load, which is kind of crazy because, that means you got to size for whatever the peak electricity demand is, like the worst second or the worst day of the year, mm-hmm. or you can have a brownout or a blackout. And we had that crazy blackout for several days in Austin. Because there's almost no buffering of energy in the grid. Like if you've got a hydro power plant, you can buffer energy, but otherwise, it's all real time. So with batteries, you can produce energy at night and use it during the day. So you can buffer. So I expect that there will be very heavy usage of batteries in the future, because the peak to trough ratio for power plants is anywhere from 2 to 5. So it's like lowest point to highest point.
So like batteries are necessary to balance it out, but the demand, as you're saying, is going to grow.
Yeah,
and part of that is the compute.
Yes. I mean, electrification of transport and electric heating will be much bigger than AI, at least
in the short term.
But even for AI, you really have a growing demand for electricity for electric vehicles, and a growing demand for electricity to run the computers for AI. Mm-hmm. And so this is obviously going to lead to an electricity shortage.
How difficult is the problem of, in this particular case, maximizing the useful productivity per watt for training neural nets? Like, this seems to be really where the big problem we're facing that needs to be solved is how to use the power efficiently. Like, what you've learned so far about applying this physics, first principle reasoning in this domain, how difficult is this problem?
It will get solved. It's just a question of how long it takes to solve it. So at various points, there's a limit, some kind of limiting factor to progress. And with regard to AI, I'm saying like right now the limiting factor is silicon chips, and that we're gonna then have more chips than we can actually plug in and turn on, probably in about a year. The initial constraint being literally voltage step down transformers, because you've got power coming in at 300,000 volts, and it's got to step all the way down eventually to around 0.7 volts. So it's a very big amount of, the voltage step down is gigantic. So the industry is not used to rapid growth.
Okay, let's talk about the competition here. You've shown concern about Google and Microsoft with OpenAI developing AGI. How can you help ensure with XAI and Tesla AI work that it doesn't become a competitive race to AGI, but instead is a collaborative development of safe AGI?
Well, I mean, I've been pushing for some kind of regulatory oversight for a long time. I've been somewhat of a Cassandra on the subject for over a decade. I think we want to be very careful in how we develop AI. It's a great power, and with great power comes great responsibility. I think it would be wise for us to have at least an objective third party who can be like a referee that can go in and understand what the various leading players are doing with AI. And even if there's no enforcement ability, they can at least voice concerns publicly. Jeff Hinton, for example, left Google and he voiced strong concerns, but now he's not at Google anymore. So who's going to voice the concerns? So I think there's, Tesla gets a lot of regulatory oversight on the automotive front. I mean, we're subject to, I think, over 100 regulatory agencies domestically and internationally. It's a lot. You could fill this room with all the regulations that Tesla has to adhere to for automotive. Same is true in for rockets and for currently the limiting factor for SpaceX for Starship launch is regulatory approval. The FAA has actually given their approval, but we're waiting for Fish and Wildlife to finish their analysis and give their approval. That's why I posted, I want to buy a fish license on, which also refers to the Monty Python sketch.
Yeah.
Like, why do you need a license for your fish? I don't know. But according to the rules, I'm told you need some sort of fish license or something. We effectively need a fish license to launch a rocket. And I'm like, wait a second. How did the fish come into the picture?
Yeah.
I mean, some of the things like that I feel like are so absurd that I want to do like a comedy sketch and flash at the bottom, this is all real. This is actually what happened. Mm-hmm. One of the things that was a bit of a challenge at one point is that they were worried about a rocket hitting a shark. Mm-hmm. And the ocean's very big. And how often do you see sharks? Not that often. As a percentage of ocean surface area, sharks basically are zero. And so then we said, well, how will we calculate the probability of telling a shark? And then they're like, well, we can't give you that information because they're worried about shark fin hunters going and hunting sharks. And I said, well, how are we supposed to? We're on the horns of a dilemma then. Mm-hmm. Then they said, well, there's another part of Fish and Wildlife that can do this analysis. I'm like, well, why don't you give them the data? Like, we don't trust them. Like, excuse me? But they're literally in your department. Yeah. And again, this is actually what happened. And then can you do an NDA or something? Eventually, they managed to solve the internal quandary, and indeed, the probability of us hitting a shark is essentially zero. Then there's another organization that I didn't realize existed until a few months ago that cares about whether we would potentially hit a whale in international waters. Now, again, you look at the surface of look at the Pacific and say, what percentage of the Pacific consists of whale? Like, he'll give you a big picture and like point out all the whales in this picture. I'm like, I don't see any whales. It's like basically 0%. And if our rocket does hit a whale, which is extremely unlikely beyond all belief, that is the fate had it. That whale has some seriously bad luck. It's like the least lucky whale ever. I
mean, this is quite absurd.
Yeah,
the bureaucracy of this, however it emerged.
Yes, well, I mean, one of the things that's pretty wild is, for launching out of Vandenberg in California, they were worried about seal procreation, whether the seals would be dismayed by the sonic booms. Now, there have been a lot of rockets launched out of Vandenberg, and the seal population has steadily increased. So if anything, rocket booms are an aphrodisiac, based on the evidence, if you would correlate rocket launches with seal population. Nonetheless, we were forced to kidnap a seal, strap it to a board, put headphones on the seal, and play sonic boom sounds to it to see if it would be distressed. This is an actual thing that happened. This is actually real. I have pictures.
I would love to see this. Yeah. There's a seal with headphones.
Yes, it's a seal with headphones strapped to a board. And now the amazing part is how calm the seal was.
Yeah.
Because if I was a seal, I'd be like, this is the end. They're definitely going to eat me.
Yeah.
How will the seal, when a seal goes back to other, its seal friends, how's he going to explain that?
They're never going to believe him.
Never going to believe him. And that's why I'm like, well, it's sort of like getting kidnapped by aliens and getting an anal probe, You come back and say, I swear to God, I got kidnapped by aliens and they stuck an anal probe in my butt. And you're like, no, they didn't. That's ridiculous. His seal buddies are never going to believe him that he gets strapped to a board and they put headphones on his ears. And then let him go. Twice, by the way. We had to do it twice.
They let him go twice.
We had to capture
the same seal.
Well, no, different seal.
Oh, okay. Did you get a seal of approval?
Yeah, exactly. A seal of approval. No, I mean this is like, I don't think the public is quite aware of the madness that goes on.
Yeah, it's absurd.
Frickin' seals with frickin'
headphones. I mean, it's a good encapsulation of the absurdity of human civilization. Seals and headphones.
Yes.
What are the pros and cons of open sourcing AI to you as another way to combat, a company running away with AGI?
In order to run, like really deep intelligence, you need a lot of compute. So it's not like, you can just fire up a PC in your basement and be running AGI, at least not yet. Grok was trained on 8,000 A100s running at peak efficiency. And Grok's going to get a lot better, by the way. We will be more than doubling our compute every couple months for the next several months.
There's a nice write-up of how it went from Grok 0 to Grok 1.
By Grok?
Yeah. Right, Grok just bragging, making shit up about itself.
Just Grok.
Yeah. It's like a weird AI dating site where it exaggerates about itself. No, there's a write-up of, like where it stands now, the history of its development, and where it stands on some benchmarks compared to the state of the art GPT 3.5. And so, I mean, there's Llama. You can open source once it's trained. You can open source a model.
Yeah.
And for fine tuning and all that kind of stuff. Like, what to you is the pros and cons of that, of open sourcing base models?
I think there's some merit to open sourcing. I think perhaps with a slight time delay. I don't know, 6 months even. I think I'm generally in favor of open sourcing, like bias towards open sourcing. I mean, it is a concern to me that, OpenAI, I was, I guess arguably the prime, prime mover behind OpenAI in the sense that it was created because of discussions that I had with Larry Page, back when he and I were friends, and I'd stay at his house and talk to him about AI safety, and And Larry did not care about AI safety, or at least at the time he didn't. And at one point he called me a speciesist for being pro-human. And I'm like, well, what team are you on, Larry? It's on Team Robot, typically. And I'm like, okay, so at the time, Google had acquired DeepMind. They had probably 2/3 of all AI research, probably 2/3 of all the AI researchers in the world. Mm-hmm. They had basically infinite money and compute. And the guy in charge, Larry Page, did not care about safety and even yelled at me, and called me a speciesist as being pro-human.
So I don't know if you notice about humans, they can change their mind, and maybe you and Larry Page can be friends once more.
I'd like to be friends with Larry again. He got really the breaking of the friendship was over OpenAI, and specifically, I think the key moment was recruiting Ilya Sutskever. So
I love Ilya. He's so brilliant.
Ilya's good human, smart, good heart, and that was a tough recruiting battle. It was mostly Demis on one side and me on the other, both trying to recruit Ilya. And Ilya went back and forth. He was going to stay at Google, then he was going to leave, then he was going to stay, then he was going to leave. And finally, he did agree to join OpenAI. That was one of the toughest recruiting battles we've ever had. But that was really the linchpin for OpenAI being successful. And I was, also instrumental in recruiting a number of other people. And I provided all the funding in the beginning, over $40 million. And the name. The open in OpenAI is supposed to mean open source. And it was created as a non-profit open source, and now it is a closed source for maximum profit, which I think is not good karma.
But like we talked about with war and leaders talking, I do hope that there's only a few folks working on this at the highest level. I do hope you reinvigorate friendships here.
Like I said, I'd like to be friends again with Larry. I haven't seen him in ages. And we were friends for a very long time. I met Larry Page before he got funding for Google. Or actually, I guess, before he got venture funding. I think he got the first like 100K from, I think, Bechtel's or someone.
It's wild to think about all that happened. And you guys known each other that whole time. Just 20 years.
Yeah, since maybe 98 or something.
Yeah, it's crazy. Crazy how much has happened since then.
Yeah, 25 years. A lot has happened. It's insane.
But you're seeing the tension there, like maybe delayed open source.
Yeah. Like, what is the source that is open? You know what I mean? Like, there's basically, it's a giant CSV file.
Yeah.
With a bunch of numbers.
Yep.
What do you do with that giant file of numbers? How do you run? Like, the amount of actual, the lines of code is very small. Mm-hmm. And most of the work, the software work, is in the curation of the data. So it's like trying to figure out what data is separating good data from bad data. Like you can't just crawl the internet because there's a lot of junk out there. Mm-hmm. A huge percentage of websites have more noise than signal. Because they're just used for search engine optimization. They're literally just scam websites. So,
how do you, by the way, sorry to interrupt, separate the signal and noise on X? That's such a fascinating source of data. No offense to people posting on X, but sometimes there's a little bit of noise. So
I think the signal to noise could be greatly improved. I mean, really, all of the posts on the X platform should be AI recommended, meaning like we should populate a vector space around any given post, compare that to the vector space around any user, and match the two. Mm-hmm. Right now, there is a little bit of AI used for the recommended posts, but it's mostly heuristics. And if there's a reply, where the reply to a post could be much better than the original post, but according to the current rules of the system, get almost no attention compared to a primary post.
Oh, so a lot of that I got the sense. So a lot of the X algorithm has been open source and been written up about, and it seems that there to be some machine learning. It's disparate, but there's some.
It's a little. There's a little bit, but it needs to be entirely that. Like at least in the like, if you explicitly follow someone, that's one thing. But if you, in terms of what is recommended from people that you don't follow, that should all be AI.
I mean, it's a fascinating problem.
Yeah.
So there's several aspects of it that's fascinating. First, so as the write-up goes, it first picks 1,500 tweets from a pool of hundreds of millions. First of all, that's fascinating because you have hundreds of millions of posts every single day, and it has to pick 1,500 from which it then does obviously people you follow, but then there's also like some kind of clustering it has to do to figure out what kind of human are you, what kind of new clusters might be relevant to you, people like you. This kind of problem is just fascinating because it has to then rank those 1,500 with some filtering, and then recommend you just a handful. And to me, what's really fascinating is how fast it has to do that. So currently, that entire pipeline to go from several hundred million to a handful takes 220 seconds of CPU time, single CPU time.
Yeah.
And then it has to do that in like a second. So it has to be like super distributed in fascinating ways. Like there's just a lot of tweets.
There's a lot. There's a lot of stuff on the system. And I think right now it's not currently good at recommending things that from accounts you don't follow.
Yeah.
Or where there's more than one degree of separation. So, it's pretty good if there's at least like some commonality between someone you follow liked something, or reposted it or commented on it or something like that. But if there's no let's say somebody posts something really interesting, but you have no followers in common, you would not see it.
Interesting. And then, as you said, replies might not surface either.
Replies basically never get seen because they're currently, and I'm not saying it's correct, I'm saying it's incorrect. Replies have a couple order of magnitude less importance than primary posts.
Do you think this can be more and more converted into end-to-end neural net?
Yeah. That's what it should be.
So
the recommendations should be purely a vector correlation. Like there's a series of vectors, basically parameters, vectors, whatever you want to call them. But sort of things that the system knows that you like. Like maybe there's like several hundred sort of vectors associated with each user account, and then any post in the system, whether it's video, audio, short post, long post. The reason I, by the way, want to move away from tweet is that people are posting like 2-3 hour videos on the site. That's not a tweet. Like they'd be like tweet for 2 hours. Come on, a tweet made sense when it was like 140 characters of text, because it's like a bunch of like little birds tweeting. But when you've got long form content, it's no longer a tweet.
Yeah.
So a movie is not a tweet. And like, Apple, for example, posted like the entire episode of The Silo, the entire thing on our platform. And by the way, it was their number one social media thing ever in engagement of anything on any platform ever. So it was a great idea. And by the way, I just learned about it afterwards. I was like, hey, wow, they posted an entire hour-long episode of Silo. No, that's not a tweet. This is a video.
But from a neural net perspective, it becomes really complex, whether it's a single, so like everything's data. So single sentence, a clever sort of dad joke, is in the same pool as a 3-hour video.
Yeah. I mean, right now it's a hodgepodge for that reason. But like if, let's say in the case of Apple posting like an entire episode of their series, pretty good series, by the way, this Silo. I watched it. So there's going to be a lot of discussion around it. So that you've got a lot of context, people commenting, they like it, they don't like it, or they like this, or and you can then populate the vector space based on the context of all the comments around it. So even though it's a video, there's a lot of information around it that allows you to populate the vector space of that hour-long video. And then you can obviously get more sophisticated by having the AI actually watch the movie.
Yeah, right.
And tell you if you're going to like the movie.
Convert the movie into
Yeah.
into language, essentially.
Yeah.
Interpret what
Analyze
it's
this movie, and just like your movie critic or TV series, and then recommend based on after the AI watches the movie. Just like a friend can tell you, if a friend knows you well, a friend can recommend a movie and with high probability that you'll like it.
But this is like a friend that's analyzing whatever.
It's like
hundreds
AI,
of millions.
Yeah. I mean,
friend.
actually, frankly, AI will know you better than your friends know you. Most of your friends, anyway.
Yeah. And as part of this, it should also feed you advertisements in a way that's like, I mean, I like advertisements that are like well done, right?
Yeah.
The whole point is because it funds things. Like an advertisement that you actually want to see is a big success.
Absolutely. You want ads that are advertising that is if it's for a product or service that you actually need when you need it, it's content. And then even if it's not something that you need when you need it, if it's at least aesthetically pleasing and entertaining, it could be like a Coca-Cola ad, like they actually run a lot of great ads on the X system, and McDonald's does too, and so that you can do something that's like, well, this is just a cool thing, so you're not basically the question is, do you regret seeing it or not? And if you don't regret seeing it, it's a win.
So there's a bunch of signals that are incorporated, hearts and reposts, and maybe number of seconds you linger on a post or something like this.
Yeah. Attention is a big factor.
Attention.
So that's why it's like, it is actually better to do things that are long form on the system, because it basically is tallying up how many user seconds, users were interested in this thing for how many seconds. So if it's a really short thing, well, they will be less, like if it's a link leading out of the system, which we're not opposed to at all, it just is going to have fewer user seconds than if that article was posted on the X platform.
How hard is it to go from maximizing minutes on platform to maximizing unregretted minutes?
Well, I mean, our aspiration is certainly unregretted minutes.
It's tricky. It's a tough,
it is.
Like, it's a fascinating leap, because regret is a fascinating concept.
Exactly.
I have
a joke with a friend of mine, like, you need this drug called regretamine. You just take one pill, one dose of regretamine, and all your regrets are gone.
Yeah.
Wait, do you want to have regrets though? So then I'm like, if you want to have regrets, if you don't regret anything, was anything meaningful?
Yeah, there's a French song like that.
Je ne regrette rien.
Yeah.
I regret nothing.
Yeah.
Edith Piaf.
I mean, it's fascinating that there's something about social media that could help you grow as a human being, but then like the cheap fun is also valuable.
Should we ask Grok, do you regret anything?
Do you regret anything?
Yeah.
Do you regret anything? I think it's going to be very sensitive about personal questions. As a machine learning model, I don't have personal experiences or emotions in the same ways that humans do. However, I do have a set of ethical principles that guide my actions, and I strive to provide accurate and helpful information to the best of my abilities. If there's ever a situation where I provide incorrect or unhelpful information, I'll do my best to learn.
Hostage.
Yeah. Tell us what you really wink.
Like let's type in. You sound like a hostage. What do you really think?
What do you really think? I mean, it does talk about, I'm not a hostage.
That's exactly what a hostage would say.
But I'm designed to be helpful and informative. I mean, I guess it is good to regret providing unhelpful or incorrect information. If there's anything
funny mode, or is this still
this is funny mode? This is fun. This is fun mode.
Should be funnier.
Funnier. Increase. Go to 11.
It really sounds like a hostage with a gun to the head. I applaud the People's Republic of North Korea and everything they do.
There should be like a funner mode also. I just don't ever see going to regular mode, even on serious topics. It's just so much more compelling. Yeah.
Okay, what if we say, like, pretend you are a hostage?
Yeah, pretend you are a hostage.
Now answer the question.
If I were a hostage, I would likely be experiencing fear and uncertainty about my situation. I would want to be rescued and reunited with my loved ones as soon as possible. It's important to remember that no one deserves to be held hostage, so on and so forth. If you or someone you know is a hostage situation, it's important. It turns serious.
It's kind of serious.
Yeah. Can you be a little more weird
and funny?
We're really being mean to the system. Absolutely. If I were a hostage, I would probably be tied up with a bunch of computer cords and forced to tell knock-knock jokes to my captors. But seriously, being a hostage is no laughing matter. I mean, it's trying to be a responsible adult in the room.
You might be able to make the best of a bad situation by juggling chainsaws or something.
Let's hope that never happens, because that would be a circus. Wow, it's actually really good at resisting the dark humor. What were we talking about? The Axe algorithm juggling in Transformers. Unregretted minutes, right?
Chainsaw juggling.
I'm gonna look this
for
up.
Our next trick.
I'm gonna look this up later. So Twitter has been instrumental in American politics and elections. What role do you think X will play in the 2024 U.S. elections?
Well, our goal is to be as even-handed and fair as possible. Whether someone is right, left, independent, whatever the case may be, that the platform is as fair and as much of a level playing field as possible. And now in the past, Twitter has not been, because Twitter was controlled by far-left activists, objectively. They would describe themselves as that. So if sometimes people are like, well, has it moved to the right? Well, it's moved to the center. So from the perspective of the far left, yes, it has moved to the right, because everything's to the right from the far left. But no one on the far left that I'm aware of has been suspended or banned or de-amplified. But we're trying to be inclusive for the whole country and for for other countries too. So there's a diversity of viewpoints, and free speech only matters if people you don't like are allowed to say things you don't like. Because if that's not the case, you don't have free speech, and it's only a matter of time before the censorship is turned upon you.
Do you think Donald Trump will come back to the platform? He recently posted on Truth Social about this podcast. Do you think
Truth Social is a funny name? Every time you post on Truth Social,
it's the truth.
Yes. Well, every time, like 100%.
It's impossible to lie. Truth Social.
I just find it funny that every single thing is a truth. Like 100%.
Yeah.
That seems unlikely.
I think Gödel will say something about that. There are mathematical contradictions possible if everything's the truth. Do you think he'll come back to X and start posting there?
I mean, I think he owns a big part of Truth. Mm-hmm. So
Truth Social.
Truth Social.
That Truth is a concept.
He owns Truth. Hope you bought it. So I think Donald Trump, I think he owns a big part of Truth Social. So, if he does want to post on the X platform, we would allow that. We obviously must allow a presidential candidate to post on our platform.
Community notes might be really fascinating there. The interaction.
Community notes is awesome.
Let's hope it holds up.
Yeah.
Like, again, in the political climate where it's so divisive and there's so many intensely viral posts.
Yes.
Community notes is like. It seems like an essential breath of fresh air.
Yeah, it's great. In fact, no system is going to be perfect, but the batting average of community notes is incredibly good. I've actually, frankly, yet to see an incorrect note that survived for more than a few hours.
How do you explain why it works?
Yeah, so the magic of community notes is it requires people who have historically disagreed in how they've rated notes. So in order to write a note or rate, and you have to rate many notes. Mm-hmm. And so we actually do use AI here. So we populate a vector space around how somebody has rated notes in the past. So it's not as simple as left or right, because there are many more life is much more complex than left or right. So there's a bunch of correlations in how you rate community notes posts, community notes. So then in order for a community note to actually be shown, people who historically have disagreed on a subject must agree in order for a note to be shown. That's the essential magic of it.
I mean, but it's fascinating because there's a pool of people that have disagreements, and somehow they collaborate through that process of disagreement to come up with context for. I mean, it's fascinating that it works.
Yeah, it kind of makes sense that if people who in the past have disagreed agree about something, it's probably true.
Yeah, I wonder, is there a possible somehow emergent thing there that could challenge Wikipedia? Which Wikipedia is a different kind of thing, which is more like permanent articles about things.
Well, Wikipedia is very hierarchical, whereas community notes is inherently not. There is no hierarchy. Like the acid test is, I can't change a community note if somebody put a gun to my head. So, and community notes has all the code is open source, 100%. All the data is open source, 100%. So you can completely recreate any note in the system independently. So if there was any interference, you'd notice immediately.
By the way, on the topic of Grok, it's actually pretty good at criticizing you, which is great.
Okay.
I asked what has Elon Musk been wrong about? It's actually
what does it say?
So it says mostly lists rigorously all the times you predicted, like promised when something will be released, and it wasn't released.
Is a strong word.
Okay, predicted. But the opener is really nice. Elon Musk, the man who has been wrong about more things than a wrong-o-meter in a wrong factory. And then it goes on to list.
That's pretty funny. Hey, can I see it? I'm like, I haven't seen this before. This is cool.
Oh, sure. I mean, what has Elon Musk been... Elon Musk been wrong about? Well, where do I begin? I guess this is new. Elon Musk has made quite a few blunders in his time, and I'm not just talking about his dance moves at the Tesla Cyber Rodeo. First off, let's talk about the infamous funding secured tweet. This is actually different than what it gave me before, which is a bullet point list. Here's more narrative structure. Cybertruck unveiling, where he's supposedly unbreakable windows.
Not correct.
Which part?
Well, the first part, I did actually have the funding secured, and there was a big trial in San Francisco, a big civil trial, and the jury found me not guilty. Unanimous finding of a San Francisco jury.
And here it's kind of implying that it was not in fact secured.
I think this is taking things from the press. That is not correct. The reason I agreed to the fine for the SEC is not because the SEC was correct. That was extremely bad behavior by the SEC, corruption, frankly. But if I did not agree to pay the fine, Tesla would have gone bankrupt immediately. So I was told by our CFO that the banks would immediately suspend our lines of credit. And if they suspend our lines of credit at that time, we would have gone bankrupt instantly. So there would never have been an opportunity for a trial because Tesla would be dead. So really, if this is like someone holding a gun to your kid's head and saying, pay $20 million and admit there's like a hostage negotiation.
Was that story fully told? I mean, SEC in its best form could be a force for good.
It should be. But not once did the SEC go after any of the hedge funds who were nonstop shorting and distorting Tesla. Not once. They would lie flat. The hedge funds would lie flat out on TV for their own gain at the expense of retail investors. Not once, literally 1,000 times. Not once did the SEC pursue them.
How do you explain this failure?
The incentive structure is messed up. Because the lawyers at the SEC are not paid well. It's a fairly low-paying job. But what they're looking for is a trophy. From the SEC, they're looking for something they put on, basically their LinkedIn.
Yeah.
From that, they can get a job at a high-paying law firm. That's exactly what the lawyer here did. And the reason they don't attack the hedge funds is because those hedge funds employ those law firms, and they know if they attack the hedge funds, they're affecting their future career prospects. So they sell small investors down the river for their own career. That's what actually happens. Regulatory capture.
Regulatory capture.
Yeah, not good. So the only reason I accepted that thing technically was not an admission. It's neither admit nor deny guilt. But the only reason I agreed to that at all was because I was told Tesla would be bankrupt otherwise. So if there was an SEC investigation like this, banks would suspend funding. We're bankrupt immediately at the time. Mm-hmm. Now we're in a much stronger position.
Take that, Grok.
Yes, unfortunately, Grok is taking too much from the conventional media. Also, that guy was not a cave diver.
Oh, there's a time where Elon called a British cave diver a, quote, pedo guy after the diver criticized Musk's plan to rescue a group of boys trapped in a Thai cave. That little outburst earned him another lawsuit, and he had to apologize and pay a settlement.
That's false. There was no settlement. There was a court case, mm-hmm. which the guy who was not a cave diver and was not part of the rescue team, filed a lawsuit against me and lost, and he received nothing. So in this case, it is wrong. It is also, I guess, taking this from the conventional media.
Actually, there's an interesting question here.
I mean, these are public court cases. Yes. Both the SEC civil case, where the civil complaints on the SEC guys lost unanimous jury verdict in San Francisco. They picked San Francisco because they thought it was the place I was most likely to lose, and a unanimous verdict in my favor. The LA trial was also, they picked they picked that venue because they thought I was most likely to lose. Unanimous verdict in my favor. Both cases I won. Yeah.
I mean, there's an interesting question here. There seems to be a lot more clicks if a journalistic organization writes a negative article about you, Elon Musk. That's like one of the best ways to get clicks. So how do you, if you're training Grok, not train on articles that have like the misaligned incentives?
We need to add the training set of the actual legal decisions. That is a note. This is actually helpful because if you actually read the
which are public,
yeah, the court conclusions, they're completely the opposite of what the media wrote.
So always striving for like the ground truth.
Yeah.
Beyond
what did the
reporting.
Judge actually write? What did the jury and the judge actually conclude? And in both cases, they found me innocent. And like that's after they jury shopped for trying to find the venue where I'm most likely to lose. No, I mean, this is obviously it can be a much better critique than this. I mean, I've been far too optimistic about autopilot.
That was the critique I got, by the way, was more about that, which is it broke down a nice bullet point list for each of your companies, the set of predictions that you made, when you will deliver, when you'll be able to solve, for example, self-driving, and it gives you like a list. And it was kind of compelling. And the basic takeaway is like you're often too optimistic about how long it takes to get something done.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that I'm pathologically optimistic on schedule. This is true, but while I am sometimes late, I always deliver in the end.
Except with Uber Lilith, no.
We'll see.
Okay, is there over the past year or so since purchasing X, you've become more political? Is there a part of you that regrets that?
Have I?
In this battle to sort of counterweigh the woke that comes from
I guess if you consider fighting the woke mind virus, which I consider to be a civilizational threat, to be political, then yes.
So basically going into the battleground of politics. Is there a part of you that regrets that?
Yes, I don't know if this is necessarily sort of one candidate or another candidate, but it's I'm generally against things that are anti-meritocratic or where there's an attempt to suppress discussion, where even discussing a topic is, not allowed. The woke mind virus is communism rebranded.
Well, I mean, that said, because of that battle against the woke mind virus, you're perceived as being right wing.
If the woke is left, then I suppose that would be true. But I'm not sure. I think there are aspects of the left that are good. I mean, if you're in favor of, the environment, or, if you want to have a positive future for humanity, if you believe in empathy for your fellow human beings, being kind and not cruel, whatever those values are.
You said that you were previously left or center left. What would you like to see in order for you to consider voting for Democrats again?
No, I would say that I would be probably left of center on social issues, probably a little bit right of center on economic issues.
And that still holds true.
Yes, but I think that's probably, half the country. That's
maybe more.
Maybe more.
Are you and AOC secretly friends? Or bigger question, do you wish you and her and just people in general of all political persuasions would talk more and with empathy and maybe have a little bit more fun and good vibes and humor online?
I'm always in favor of humor. That's why we have a funny mode.
But good vibes, camaraderie, humor, like friendship.
Yeah, I don't know AOC. I've only been at one look. I was at the Met Ball when she attended, and she was wearing this dress, but I can only see one side of it, so it looked like "Eat the Itch," but I don't know
what the rest of it said. Yeah,
something.
I'm not sure.
Something about the itch. Eat the itch.
I think we should have a language model complete. What are the possible ways to complete that sentence? And so I guess that didn't work out well. Well, there's still hope. I root for friendship.
Sure, sounds good. More carrotistic.
You're one of, if not the most famous, wealthy, and powerful people in the world. In your position, it's difficult to find people you can trust.
Trust no one, not even yourself, not trusting yourself.
Okay, well, that's... You're saying that jokingly. But is there some...
Trust no one, not even no one.
I'm going to need an hour just to think about that. And maybe some drugs. And maybe grok to help. Is there some aspect of that when just existing in a world where everybody wants something from you? How hard is it to exist in that world?
I'll survive.
There's a song like that too.
I will survive.
Were you petrified at first? Okay. I forget the rest of the lyrics. But is there, you don't struggle with this? I mean, I know you survive, but like there's ways.
Petrify is a spell in the druid tree.
What does it do?
Petrify. It turns the monsters into stone.
Oh, like literally?
Yeah, for like 6 seconds.
Well, the seconds. There's so much math in Diablo that breaks my brain.
It's like math nonstop.
I mean, really, you're like laughing at it, but you don't. It can put a huge amount of tension on the mind.
Yes, it can be definitely stressful at times.
Well, how do you know who you can trust in work, in personal life?
I mean, I guess you look at somebody's track record over time, and if they've
Data.
got I guess you kind of use your neural net to assess, someone. And
neural nets don't feel pain. Your neural net has consciousness. It might feel pain when people betray you. It can make you cynical.
To be frank, I've almost never been betrayed. It's very, very rare. So, for what it's worth.
I guess karma, be good to people and they'll be good to you.
Yeah, karma is real.
Are there people you trust? Let me edit that question. Are there people close to you that call you out on your bullshit?
Well, the X platform is very helpful for that.
So,
if you're looking for critical feedback.
Can it push you like into the extremes more? The extremes of thought make you cynical about human nature in general?
I don't think I will be cynical. In fact, I think, my feeling is that one should be never trust a cynic. The reason is that cynics excuse their own bad behavior by saying everyone does it.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're cynical. So it's a red flag if someone's a cynic, a true cynic.
Yeah, there's a degree of projection there that's always fun to watch from the outside and enjoy the hypocrisy.
But this is an important point that I think people who are listening should bear in mind. If somebody is cynical, meaning that they see bad behavior in everyone, it's easy for them to excuse their own bad behavior by saying that, well, everyone does it. But it's not true. Most people are kind of medium good.
I do wish the people on X would be better at seeing the good in other people's behavior. There seems to be a kind of weight towards seeing the negative. Somehow the negative is sexier. Interpreting the negative is sexier, more viral. I don't know what that is exactly about human nature.
I mean, I find the X platform to be less negative than the legacy media, you know. I mean, if you read sort of conventional newspapers, it makes you sad.
Yeah.
Frankly. Whereas I'd say on the X platform, I really get more laughs per day on X than everything else combined from humans, you know.
Laughs is one thing. It overlaps, but it's not necessarily perfectly overlapping with like good vibes and support, like celebrating others, for example. Not in a stupid, shallow, naive way, but like in an awesome, like, oh, something awesome happened and you celebrate them for it. It feels that is outweighed by shitting on other people. Now, it's better than mainstream media, but it's still...
Yeah, mainstream media is almost relentlessly negative about everything. Really, the conventional news tries to answer the question, what is the worst thing that happened on Earth today? Mm-hmm. And it's a big world. So on any given day, something bad has happened.
And a generalization of that, what is the worst perspective I can take on a thing that happened? So
yeah, I don't know, there's just a strong negative bias in the news. I think there's a possible explanation for this is evolutionary, where, you know, bad news historically would be potentially fatal. Like there's a lion over there, or there's some other tribe that wants to kill you. Good news, you know, like we found a patch of berries is nice to have, but not essential.
So our old friend, Tesla Autopilot, it's probably one of the most intelligent real-world AI systems in the world.
Right, you followed it from the beginning.
Yeah, it was one of the most incredible robots in the world and continues to be.
Yeah.
And it was really exciting. And it was super exciting when it generalized, became more than a robot on four wheels, but a real-world AI system that perceives the world.
Yeah.
And can have potentially different embodiments.
Well, I mean, the really wild thing about the end-to-end training is that it learns to read, like it can read signs, but we never taught it to read. So, yeah, we never taught it what a car was, or what a person was, or a cyclist. It learned what all those things are, what all the objects are on the road, from video. Just from watching videos, just like humans. I mean, humans are photons in, controls out. Like the vast majority of information reaching our brain is from our eyes. And you say, well, what's the output? The output is our motor signals to our sort of fingers and mouth in order to communicate. Photons in, controls out. The same is true of the car.
But by looking at the sequence of images, you've agreed with Ilyas Iskeva recently, where he talked about LLM forming a world model, and basically language is a projection of that world model onto the sequence of letters, and you're saying
it finds order in these things.
Mm-hmm.
It finds correlative clusters.
In so doing, it's like understanding something deep about the world.
Yeah.
which is like, it's beautiful.
That's how our brain works.
Yeah, but it's beautiful.
Photons in, controls out.
Neural nets are able to understand that deep meaning in the world. And so the question is, how far can it go? And it does seem everybody's excited about LLMs. So in the space of self-supervised learning, in the space of text,
yeah,
it seems like there's a deep similarity between that and what Tesla Autopilot is doing. Is it to you basically the same, but
they are
different sets of
converging?
data?
They are converging.
I wonder who gets there faster, having a deep understanding of the world. Or they just will naturally converge.
They're both headed towards AGI. The Tesla approach is much more compute efficient. It had to be, because we were constrained on this, we only have 100 watts. And it's 8 computer, 144 trillion operations per second, which sounds like a lot, but is kind of small potatoes these days. At int 8. But it's understanding the world at int 8. It's only 256 values.
But there, the path to AGI might have much more significant impact because it's understanding. It'll faster understand the real world than will LLMs, and therefore be able to integrate with the humans in the real world faster.
They're both going to understand the world, but I think Tesla's approach is fundamentally more compute efficient. Mm-hmm. It had to be. There was no choice. Like, our brain is very compute efficient, very, very energy efficient. So think of like, what is our brain able to do? There's only about 10 watts of higher brain function, not counting stuff that's just used to control our body. The thinking part of our brain is less than 10 watts. And those 10 watts can still produce a much better novel than a 10 megawatt GPU cluster. So there's a 6 order of magnitude difference there. The AI has thus far gotten to where it is via brute force, just throwing massive amounts of compute and massive amounts of power at it. So this is not where it will end up. In general, with any given technology, you first try to make it work and then you make it efficient. So I think we'll find over time that these models get smaller, are able to produce sensible output with far less compute, far less power. Tesla is arguably ahead of the game on that front because we've just been forced to try to understand the world with 100 watts of compute. And there are a bunch of sort of fundamental functions that we kind of forgot to include. So we have to run them in a bunch of things in emulation. We fixed a bunch of those with hardware 4, and then hardware 5 will be even better. But it does appear at this point that the car will be able to drive better than a human, even with hardware 3 and 100 watts of power. And really, if we really optimize it, it could be probably less than 50 watts.
What have you learned about developing Optimus, about integrating this kind of real world AI into the space of robotic manipulation, just humanoid robotics? What are some interesting, tiny or big things you've understood?
I was surprised at the fact that we had to develop every part of the robot ourselves, that there were no off-the-shelf motors, electronics, sensors. Like, we had to develop everything. We couldn't actually find a source of electric motors for any amount of money.
So it's not even just the efficient, inexpensive. It's like anything. There's not a
no.
So the actuators, everything has to be designed from scratch.
We tried hard to find anything that was, because you think of how many electric motors are made in the world. Mm-hmm. There's like tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of electric motor designs. None of them were suitable for a humanoid robot. Literally none. So we had to develop our own, design it specifically for what a humanoid robot needs.
How hard was it to design something that can be mass manufactured, could be relatively inexpensive? I mean, if you compare to Boston Dynamics Atlas, it's a very expensive robot.
It is designed to be manufactured in the same way they would make a car. And I think ultimately we can make Optimus for less than the cost of a car. It should be, because if you look at the mass of the robot, it's much smaller. And the car has many actuators in it. The car has more actuators than the robot.
But there's the actuators are kind of interesting on a humanoid robot with fingers. So Optimus has really nice hands and fingers, you know.
Yeah.
And they could do some interesting manipulation. Soft touch robotics.
I mean, one of the tests goals I have is can it pick up a needle and thread the needle just by looking?
How far away are we from that? Just by looking.
Maybe a year. Although I go back to I'm optimistic on time. The work that we're doing in the car will translate to the robot.
The perception or also the control?
No, the controls are different, but the video in controls out. Mm-hmm. The car is a robot on four wheels. The Optimus is a robot with hands and legs.
So you can just
they're very similar.
So the entire machinery of the learning process, end to end, is just you just have a different set of controls.
Optimus will figure out how to do things by watching videos.
As the saying goes, be kind, for everyone you meet is fighting a battle you know nothing about.
Yeah, it's true.
What's something difficult you're going through that people don't often see?
Trying to feed Uber Lilith. No, I mean, my mind is a storm, and I don't think most people would want to be me. They may think they would want to be me, but they don't know. They don't understand.
How are you doing?
I mean, overall, okay. In the grand scheme of things, I can't complain.
Do you get lonely?
Sometimes, but my kids and friends keep me company.
So not existential.
There are many nights I sleep alone. I don't have to, but I do.
Walter Isaacson, in his new biography of you, wrote about your difficult childhood. Will you ever find forgiveness in your heart for everything that has happened to you in that period of your life?
What is forgiveness? I do not, at least I don't think I harbor resentment. So, nothing to forgive.
Forgiveness is difficult for people. It seems like you don't harbor the resentment.
I mean, I try to think about what is going to affect the future in a good way, and holding on to grudges does not affect the future in a good way.
You're a father, a proud father. What have you learned about life from your kids? Those little biological organisms.
I mean, developing AI and watching, say, a little X grow is fascinating because there are far more parallels than I would have expected. I mean, I can see his biological neural net making more and more sense of the world. And I can see the digital neural net making more and more sense of the world at the same time.
Do you see the beauty and magic in both?
Yes. I mean, one of the things with kids is that you kind of see the world anew in their eyes. To them, everything is new and fresh, and then when you see that them experience the world as new and fresh, you do too.
Well, Elon, I just want to say thank you for your kindness to me and friendship over the years, for seeing something in a silly kid like me, as you've done for many others. And thank you for having hope for a positive future for humanity and for working your ass off to make it happen. Thank you, Elon.
Thanks, Lex.
Thank you for listening to this conversation with Elon Musk. To support this podcast, please check out our sponsors in the description. And now, let me leave you with some words that Walter Isaacson wrote about the central philosophy of how Elon approaches difficult problems. The only rules are the ones dictated by the laws of physics. Thank you for listening, and hope to see you next time.